Well, LSU has everything on the table this year. Nussmeier, elite weapons, a retooled defense, and really, if you talk to their insiders and fan base, zero excuses. They need to make the playoff this year. It's year 4 for Brian Kelly. Ed Orgeron got it done in year 4. Nick Saban got it done in year 4. Les Miles only needed 3 years. Is it enough to win it all in 2025? And that's what we're going to figure out today. Aggies, welcome to another Opponent Spotlight, where we give a scouting report for one of A&M's key opponents in 2025. And any LSU fans that may have stumbled into this video, welcome. This is your chance to get an outsider's perspective. I know we've had some bad blood over the years, but I will try to put that bias aside and give you my honest outlook on your team heading into the season. So please chime in. Let me know where I'm right. Let me know where I'm wrong. Add context where needed. Correct me where needed. Welcome in, guys. Let's talk LSU. LSU is honestly one of the more fascinating teams for me to look into going into this 2025 season, because if you look at their year last year, there was some really good stuff. 6-1 start, one of the most explosive offenses in the country, led by Garrett Nussmeier, Aaron Anderson, Kyron Lacey, a solid offensive line. But then a 3-game skid kind of in the later portion of the year that saw the defense kind of fall apart against some running quarterbacks, and an offense that just couldn't get out of its own way at times. Garrett Nussmeier trying to maybe do too much at times. But you bring the quarterback back. You bring back the coaching staff. You have continuity in a lot of ways in this coaching staff this year. You rebuilt the defensive side of that staff last year with Blake Baker coming in from Missouri, kind of poaching that Missouri staff at large. And I think defensively, you kind of got a jump. But it was a jump from being a bottom dweller to kind of a mid-tier defense. And that alone was commendable. But it will look to make a secondary jump. It will have to go from mid-tier to upper echelon to help this offense that brings so many exciting pieces to the table this year to the forefront and into the playoff picture. When I was looking into this team, getting ready for this video, I thought that the pressure that LSU and Brian Kelly were under was maybe a little bit overblown and exaggerated by my Aggie lens, and maybe just a lot of Aggies kind of point and laugh and just waiting for the thing to fall apart. But when listening to LSU insiders, looking into the LSU fan base, the pressure, the expectations, they're very real. It really is playoff or bust for Brian Kelly this year. So there are a couple stress points on this team that we're going to have to highlight. It's the offensive line. Obviously, you lose 4 players to the next level, and that's a big deal. And that was an offensive line that was really good in pass protection, but really struggled in run blocking for whatever reason. I couldn't tell you why. Maybe you guys can help me out with that. Defensively, you rebuild a lot. You really start that secondary from scratch. There's a couple holdovers out there, but for the most part, it's going to be a totally new look secondary. In defensive end position, Braden Swinson on to the next level. You bring in Jack Pyburn, you bring in Patrick Payton and others, and you're looking at a fully retooled defense that brings in a lot of win-now players. You're really not investing for the next year and the next year with this portal class. You're building for the now. It's very, very clear that LSU is signaling that this is their year. So guys, thanks for being here. Like and sub if you like this kind of content. Let's get right into this offense. So when you're looking at the offensive side of the football for LSU, as we've been talking about, and as you know, it starts with Garrett Nussmeier. It's the senior quarterback. Always wanted to play for LSU. Living the dream. Could have gone pro last year. Decided to come back and finish the job for his alma mater. He's a Tiger through and through. And even as an Aggie, you have to respect a guy that will ride or die for his school like that. Garrett Nussmeier, in revisiting this team, I really enjoyed watching his throwing ability. Absolute NFL arm. Has every throwing angle in the book, every pass, over the shoulder, tight window, layered ball. You name it, Garrett Nussmeier has it. Now, the one thing with Garrett Nussmeier that everybody knows about is I think he relied on his tools and his skill set and just kind of let it fly a little bit too much at times down the stretch of the year. Got himself into trouble. Tried to do a little bit too much. But now with these elite weapons that have been influxed into the team in in Nick Anderson and in Barry Brown, you really got to tighten that thing up a little bit if you're Garrett Nussmeier, but year 1 starter. There's reason to believe in year 2 he can clean it up because he has tools with the best of them, and he quite honestly might have been a first-round quarterback last draft. He might be the first quarterback to get off the board if he has the year most people think he'll have this year. So Garrett Nussmeier, the trigger man, he comes back. I think he's going to have a Heisman consideration type of year. If he's at the top of that list or maybe the 5th player in that list, that remains to be seen. But I have a feeling that he's going to have that kind of season. He will need help from his offensive line. He got help from his offensive line in the pass block department last year, but he loses 4 to the league. The only one that comes back is DJ Chester. Will Campbell, John Emery, both tackles that have started for 3 straight years for LSU, gone to the next level. The guards are gone as well. And they've done a lot. They bring in 2 transfer portal players in Josh Thompson and Braylon Moore that LSU probably will expect to start next year. I think Josh Thompson can play either guard or tackle. Braylon Moore, most likely a center. He's been a center for years at Virginia Tech. And DJ Chester, from reports, is more comfortable at that guard position anyways. And there's a lot of ways you can slice and dice this offensive line. It looks like Tyree Adams, who was kind of the next man in last year, will probably start at that left tackle position. I would guess that a Weston Davis starts at right tackle unless a Josh Thompson gets in there at that tackle spot. Again, lots of ways you could go with it. But here's the key with the offensive line. There is talent out there, whichever way you go with it. There will be talented players out there. It's going to be about gelling. It's going to be about that cohesion and chemistry that is oh so important for an offensive line in the sport of football. And that has to happen pretty fast because the first 5 games of the year, that's going to be a kind of a talking point throughout this video when you're looking at LSU. It's getting off the ground. You have the Clemson game. In 2 weeks, you have the Florida game. 2 weeks after that, you're on the road at Ole Miss. At what point in that early season arc will this offensive line at least have enough chemistry to bring like at least a B- grade to the trenches on the offensive side of the football? Because that's really all this team needs. You need to be a decent run blocking team. You need to give Garrett Nussmeier some time. He's not a fast player. He's not really a scrambler, but he is a really good pocket navigator and he can extend plays. So as long as they're giving him some daylight, Garrett Nussmeier can play some ball with that. So LSU fans, you let me know what you think the configuration might be. There's a lot of names out there that could play, but I have a feeling both transfers and DJ Chester will be starting, and I'm pretty sure Tyree Adams will be playing too. Had about 150 snaps last year, which is a decent amount of experience to go in from a guy that was not a starter before. So we'll see with this offensive line. We had to start there because if they do their job, it opens things up for an elite receiver core. Nick Anderson, Barry Brown, absolutely coveted receiver picks out of the portal this last offseason. But make no mistake, LSU already had some power in that receiver room because Aaron Anderson was the leading receiver last year, kind of the surprise of the year in the slot position. You got little Anderson, you got big Nick Anderson, who's just kind of a big catch and run threat, but make no mistake, he can make things happen with the ball in his hand as well. Barry Brown, just elite with the ball in his hands. And he's the kind of player that, as an Aggie, I'm looking at this secondary. I'm looking at our tackling issues last year. Barry Brown is the kind of guy that can make A&M pay if we can't wrap him up and get him on the ground because this guy can dance. This guy can change angles. This guy can return kicks. I think he has 5 kickoff returns in his career. Barry Brown's going to be all over the place. You don't have to pass him the ball. You can hand him the ball off and he'll make things happen. But you also have Chris Hilton, who came back in late last year after injury. Really good contested ball catcher, over-the-shoulder catches, big play threat. You have a depth guy in Xavier Thomas. This is a receiver group that can go 5 or 6 deep with guys that you're happy to see on the field. It's not like there's going to be a major drop-off. Obviously, the leading 3, Anderson, Brown, and Anderson, are going to be stars. But if you have Hilton and Thomas out there, you don't feel bad about that. You have experience and you have firepower. And it's going to be all about this offensive line setting things up to get those players the ball in their hands. And that's the question mark of this offense. You do lose Mason Taylor. We'd be remiss not to mention it. But I really like Trey'Dez Green as a pass catcher. He showed his ability late in that bowl game. Just kind of a safety valve kind of tight end. Big body, a basketball player's body. The blocking will have to, round the corner for him. That's where most young receiving tight ends struggle. And that'll go in line with the rest of this offensive line that did struggle even with those 4 NFL players run blocking last year. Caden Durham had himself a career year, kind of not a career year, but a bust onto the scene kind of year as a freshman. But if you can get that road grading offensive line blocking leveled up a little bit, you can really increase that yard per carry. You can really help this offense breathe. You can really help open up this passing game. So really, man, everything's in place if that offensive line comes together. So y'all let me know what you think of this offense. Aggies, we're going to want to attack this offensive line and pin our ears back and get after this quarterback. Because I don't know if they're going to be a great running team. I don't know if they're going to be an improved running team. They could be, because it was pretty bad last year. There's only room to improve there. But will it? So I think Cassius Howells of the world, the Dayon Hayes of the world, they'll need to be at their best to get after Garrett Nussmeier. Because if he has too much time, if that internal clock isn't speeding up, he's going to spit that ball out to all these playmakers. They're going to be running around all over the place. In the A&M secondary, that contrasts the LSU secondary in a big way, Our secondary kind of underperformed last year, but we get everybody back. Your secondary underperformed last year, but you rebuilt that damn thing. So we're going to have to shore a lot of things up that we already had last year to stop this kind of offensive attack. This offensive attack is exactly what we're bracing for as an A&M secondary. This is what we're improving to combat. I mean, this kind of receiver group, the Ohio States of the world, the Texas receiver units that we've seen in recent years. This is exactly what we are looking to improve upon to combat as a secondary at A&M. So we'll have to be ready by the time we roll into Death Valley, because this is the kind of offense that can punish you if you're giving up explosives, if you're just having lapses in coverage. They'll expose you. So we got to get after the quarterback, and we got to be able to tackle in the open field and stay with men and be disciplined in your zone defense assignments. We'll see what happens, guys. Aggies, let me know how you're feeling. LSU, fill in the blanks where I missed. Moving over to the defensive side of the football. I would be remiss not to start with this linebacker group. Whit Weeks was an absolute godsend last year. Breakout player. Really, really good at covering ground as a linebacker, an effort player, an athletic player, can get into plays he has no business being in across the field, chasing plays down, breaking angles. Now, he's not the perfect linebacker. He struggled a little bit with eye discipline in between the tackles, especially with like zone reads and quarterback keepers and that kind of stuff that really plagued this LSU defense in that 3-game skid late in the season. He has to improve in that regard, but he will have Harold Perkins back next to him, or at least on that defense. In stopping mobile quarterbacks and getting to quarterbacks is Harold Perkins' bag. Harold Perkins returns, and it sounds like they're going to put him in that star nickel spot, kind of have him rushing off the edge, get him in coverage a little bit, but it sounds like they're going to play him close to that box as kind of an outside hybrid linebacker nickel role. And that begs the question, who starts next to Whit Weeks? It could be his older brother, West Weeks, a veteran, an older guy who can bring some discipline to the linebacker room. You also had Davon Keys, who flashed late in the year, had a pick 6 in their bowl game. This linebacker group, I don't know who the exact 3 names or 2 names are going to be, but I know this room is deep, and I know this room can cover ground with the best of them. And if this defensive line helps them out and kind of increases their rigidity and their run-stopping ability, it's really going to open things up for this linebacker group. Let's talk about the defensive line. Last year, you had 2 true freshmen playing a lot of football in Dominic McKinley and Ahmad Bro. Both are kind of lighter defensive tackles. Dominic McKinley, kind of a towering 6'6", 300-pounder. Ahmad Bro, more of a slight-footed 280-pound defensive lineman. And if you're looking at LSU going into last season, where defensive tackle was a big question mark going into the year, if you listen to Brian Kelly and what this coaching staff was saying, it's like the only guy they felt really good about was Jacobian Guillory. And he went down last year and didn't play the season. And so you had these 2 freshmen play. You had a couple other guys that have moved on to the next level play as well. And you get Guillory back now. And I think Guillory really complements that duo of young guys they have, because where they're kind of either taller or slight-footed, Guillory's that squatty 6'2", 320-pound textbook nose tackle you want in this conference. So that's a nice little tandem they have forming there. They also bring in Sadir Mitchell from Texas and Bernard Gooden from South Florida. And that could be a really solid defensive tackle rotation. I don't necessarily know about its upside or if there are really big kind of playmakers or game wreckers in that defensive tackle position. Who knows what those freshmen can turn into their sophomore years. But I think it's going to be solid and really help this defensive tackle unit out. The defensive end room is really interesting for LSU. And this is really where you invested heavily in the portal. Jack Pyburn from Florida, Patrick Payton from Florida State, and Jamari Butler from Nebraska. I think Jack Pyburn is exactly what this LSU defense needed. Toughness, physical, intense guy, just 8 tackles at Florida, 90 tackles on the season last year, but a guy that apparently from reports brings a lot of leadership and intensity to the practice field. A guy that kind of brings that Rudy attribute to the practice that really just raises the intensity and stakes of their training and the rooms where they're getting better when no one's looking. And I think that's exactly what this LSU defense needed. Just that viciousness, that rigidity in the run-stopping department. And I think Pyburn brings that. I don't know if he's the best edge rusher. I don't know if he has the best bend for a defensive end, but he's tough and he's a thumper and he brings that crazy attitude that this LSU defense really needed. But you get that bend with Patrick Payton. You get that bend with Jamari Butler. Those are guys that can get after it. And Patrick Payton's really interesting because he comes from a really broken team at FSU. And, he had a solid year, 4 sacks, like 30-plus tackles. But let's see how he adapts to this LSU defense where there are real stakes on the line. It's a team that really believes they can win at the highest level. Because, he was a good player, a really good player. He was one of the most sought-after players in the portal. But can he take that next step? And with Kevin Peoples next to him, who was a big part in that Braden Swinson breakout last year and developed defensive ends with the best of them at Missouri in his time before LSU, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these new defensive ends, or maybe a Gabriel Relaford, who we Aggies wish we had gotten in the recruiting cycle a few years ago, I wouldn't be surprised if he helps one of those guys get to the next level. So overall, this defensive line, I would say the floor has raised with the unit. The depth has absolutely raised with the unit. I don't know what the ceiling is. I'm not sure if it has anybody that really pops as a single game destroyer right now off the tape. Again, Peoples can bring that to one of these guys. But I do know as a front seven, when you factor in this linebacker group, that's where you see the strength of this defense. You see that tandem. You see this defensive line able to kind of hold their own and hold ground and just create havoc more consistently than before and be tough more consistently than before, to open things up for Whit Weeks, to see things better, to kind of get downhill and attack the lanes a lot better, for Harold Perkins to kind of pin his ears back and play fearlessly and see things a lot better. So I really see this as a front seven tandem more so than anybody on this offensive line specifically popping. Now, LSU fans, let me know there. A&M fans, we have a really good offensive line this year. I think we'll have a chance to block some of these defensive linemen at LSU. However, the X factor is the upside in this linebacker room. These guys have ridiculous athleticism. And if you're looking at this LSU team as a whole, I think speed is maybe their best overall attribute. From DN to linebacker, secondary, receivers, running backs, even their tight ends have athleticism. This is a fast team. So you're going to have to take care of business at the line of scrimmage to get to these linebackers effectively if you're run blocking this LSU team, because it should be quite significantly improved this year. But there's a lot of chemistry to gain. There's a lot of chemistry and cohesion that has to form for LSU's defense, just like we were talking about with that new look offensive line. Because you got a lot of new players, all those new defensive ends. And in the secondary, you bring in A.J. Halsey. You bring in Mansour Delane. I think Mansour Delane might be the best single transfer portal piece they brought onto their team. As a lockdown corner, he's your go-to guy from day one. And that's even with them bringing back their number one corner from last year in Ashton Stamps, who wasn't great, wasn't terrible, was kind of an average corner, didn't really kill you too much, wasn't just an absolute stopper. But he could be a lot better with a guy like Mansour kind of taking some pressure off of him. Mansour Delane, coming from Virginia Tech, could have been a draft pick last year. And he comes in, he brings textbook corner size. He can go stride for stride with the fastest of them. He can turn his hips with the most agile of them. He's a great piece to add. And then, of course, A.J. Halsey is a guy that just 8 tackles from that safety position. I think he had 90 tackles in 2023 with Houston and had like 70 last year. He should help shore up that third level in their run stop defense that kind of, doomed them with guys getting out of position and giving up big plays. Like, think of the Alabama game with Jalen Milroe running free. A lot of safeties taking bad angles in that third level. And I think A.J. Halsey's the kind of guy that has the potential to fix that for them. They bring in Tamarcus Cooley, another safety who could play nickel and might kind of be one of the guys they have to select and decide what they do with when you're thinking about where you're going to put Harold Perkins, because he could play that star nickel position. You could put Cooley at safety and have him go next to A.J. Halsey, but they still have Jordan Gilbert in Aggies. We remember him, and he struggled last year. From reports, he played hurt, but we'll see how these guys that come back in Gilbert and Stamps look next to what seem to be higher level players. But this is for sure. And Javen Toviano, another guy that A&M was battling for in recruiting, played a lot in the bowl game. I think he started and played the whole bowl game. They certainly have a higher floor and more depth in this secondary. That's without a doubt. And there's certainly upside in Delane and Halsey. So this shouldn't be the secondary that is just like Swiss cheese, giving up big plays, having busts. That should not be the case this year. But again, I'll bring it up one more time. It's the cohesion. It's how quickly these guys can learn to play together. It's how quickly they can all be assignment sound together, because much like the offensive line, if one guy in the secondary is out of position or has bad habits, that can make the whole unit look bad. Just like if your left guard is giving up pressure consistently. You just have a bad offensive line if that's the case. If the weakest link is the status quo, of your offensive line, and I think a lot of the same can be said for the secondary. But I think you bring in some really high-end players in this secondary, and I think of all the areas they brought in talent, I think the receiver room and the secondary is where they brought in the most premier talent to go right away. Defensive ends, it's solid. We'll see what Peoples can do with them. Now, looking at this team, talking about the urgency of getting over that chemistry hump. Let's pull up the schedule real quick. You see the way their season starts. You can talk about their week 1 woes. It's been the case since 2019. They can't get over that week 1 hump, whatever. But I look at this first chunk of 5 games before the first bye week. At Clemson, home versus Florida, at Ole Miss. At what point in this 5-game span does everything click for this offensive line and this new look defense? Because the pieces are there. It's all about coming together and getting you out of the gates in this 2025 campaign that'll get you to the place where you're trying to go. You know, I know no LSU fan wants to hear this, and I know you don't. This is not how you're thinking at all about the situation. But as an Aggie, I'm really not pointing fingers or laughing or calling LSU season doomed if you lose to Clemson, because that is a lot to get right with a very much rebuilt team in a lot of ways on the road, the battle for Death Valley in week 1. It's a really good passing attack from Clemson, really good in the trenches, solid defense, good receivers. That is a lot of pressure for that new look team out the gates. But if you win that game, if you find a way to go and claim your Death Valley on the road, I think I move Clemson from like playoff contender in my mind to championship, maybe favorite. That will show me what I need to know about LSU. Because for LSU, it's all about getting out the gate strong. Because if you come out of this 5-game stretch with 2 losses, the pressure is maximized coming out of that bye week. But even if you lose to Clemson, you have the revenge game versus Florida coming home. A great passer, some good pass catchers, a good running game. This will test you once again. But at this point, you'll have had a chance to stamp things in over your first few weeks of practice, stamping in what you did in fall camp, getting together. And I would feel decent about an LSU game in that Florida game, about LSU in that Florida game, as long as the wheels don't come off versus Clemson. And then you get to do the second, iteration of that road environment on the road at Ole Miss. And at that point, you should be a team that's put together and give Ole Miss your best shot on the road. And they should not be what they were last year or the year before. They should be in very much rebuild mode from top to bottom. But they bring in talent with the best of them too right now. The Portal King, Lane Kiffin. It'll be a test for sure. So I'm really looking at this first 5 games as the stress point for the year for LSU. And if you get out of the gates, if you come out of here 4-1, I will have known LSU has arrived in the way that all of you guys, all the LSU fans expect them to in 2025. So LSU fans, what do you make of this pressure that the team is under this year? Am I overselling it? Am I underselling it? It feels very real when I look at what the LSU insiders and talking heads are saying right now. And I feel like that's maximized at the beginning of the season. Aggies, how you feeling about this team, man? I know these receivers scare us. Maybe we're chomping at the bit a little bit, offensive line, getting into this kind of new look defensive line. It should be an intriguing matchup, but again, we just haven't gotten over that road hump at Death Valley. And I think it'll be a very interesting game to watch, and we'll know so much more about this team when October 25th rolls by. It'll be a totally different outlook by then. Let me know how I did. Like and sub. Appreciate you guys being here. Can't wait for the season. See you in the next one.